Welcome to the weekend edition of the Fast Five by Fear and Greed. I'm Michael Thompson, and hello, Sean Aylmer.
Hello, Michael.
Sean, on weekdays, it's all about the Fast Five, the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. On the weekend, we still obviously keep it to 5 minutes. It wouldn't be the Fast Five if we didn't, but we're going to pick out the biggest story of the week, the sleeper story, one that's kind of flying under the radar a little bit, the most remarkable story, and then a very subjective category of our favourite story. Let's jump into it. The biggest story of the week. What do you reckon it was?
I think it was the economy. Inflation fell last month. We found that out this week. It came in at 5.6%, down from 6.8% in April. Is it enough to stop the Reserve Bank from lifting interest rates again? Probably not. If you take out volatile items, things like petrol prices and holiday travel, it actually didn't fall that much. That's the problem, remains much too high. We had a surprise jump in retail sales figures. Pretty much everyone thinks that's a one-off. We had Treasurer Jim Chalmers saying the budget surplus for the year ending yesterday, 30th of June, will be more than $4.2 billion. Also had a drop in job vacancies, which are now down 10% over the year, and that's a good thing. Mind you, probably we'll still get 1 or 2 more rate rises over the next few months.
Yeah, big story. The biggest one for me this week, Sean, was the aborted coup against Russian President Vladimir Putin by Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of the mercenary Wagner group. That's the group that has been kind of paid by Russia to lead a lot of the fighting in Ukraine. Prigozhin has been complaining about military leadership for a while now, about kind of strategy and resourcing, and built up to the point that a week ago his troops actually marched towards Moscow. They took one key city. They made it pretty close to Moscow with very little resistance. The coup was called off. Prigozhin went into exile in Belarus, and his troops could either join him or join the Russian army or go home. The reason this was so big, it was a big story anyway, everyone was watching the story, but it was a tipping point potentially for Russia and for Putin's leadership. The fact that a mutiny was able to get so far with so little resistance exposes huge cracks in Putin's grip on his country, and certainly his authority has been damaged. The US says it had nothing to do with the coup. From a geopolitical perspective, this is such a big story. From an economic perspective, it is big because the conflict in Ukraine obviously has an enormous impact on energy prices, and a lot of the inflationary pressure is all kind of coming from there. And anything that weakens the leadership of Russia, one of the largest producers and exporters of oil and gas in the world, is obviously a major story.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Michael, what's your most remarkable story of the week?
Look, some of the allegations and revelations about the behaviour of politicians that we heard this week. A whistleblower has claimed that a consultancy sought to funnel money to former Liberal MP, federal Liberal MP Stuart Robert, in exchange for government services contracts. You've got Government Services Minister Bill Shorten now asking for advice about the claims. Stuart Robert denies them, saying they were made under privilege. It's an abuse, he says, of that privilege. But it's all pretty serious, alleging that a consulting company run by friends of Robert funneled money to him in return for him using his position as a minister in the Morrison government to help the consultancy and its client. We will be watching this one closely because we certainly haven't heard the last of it. We may have heard, though, the last of the situation involving former New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian, because this week in New South Wales, the Independent Commission Against Corruption recommended that Berejiklian not face criminal charges despite finding that she engaged in corrupt conduct and breached the public trust. This is all over the relationship that she had for up to 5 years with former Wagga Wagga Liberal MP Darryl Maguire. It posed a conflict of interest, and she failed to flag concerns about his conduct when it appeared he could be corrupt, and now he may face criminal charges. He has been referred for potential prosecution, Sean. Big story this week.
Yes, absolutely. Now, my most remarkable story, really, it's about the financial year we've just had. It ended yesterday, the 30th of June, of course. The ASX was actually up 10% for the year. A couple of the worst performers were the Star Entertainment and Domino's. The best were some pharmaceutical companies. Some of the battery metals miners did pretty well. WiseTech Global was another one. We kind of end the financial year, though, knowing that central banks around the world are still going to lift interest rates. We have Apple worth nearly $3 trillion US, much more than the whole of the Australian housing market. We've got Bitcoin finding friends again. Plenty going on in financial markets. A big week, a big year, really, for financial markets.
Yeah, it certainly has. Sleeper story, one that's flying under the radar a little. What have you got for us?
Mine is the parliamentary inquiry that recommended banning all advertisements for online gambling within 3 years. Bunch of recommendations. That really was the big one. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese described gambling ads as reprehensible, so we can be pretty confident that many of these recommendations will be implemented. What's interesting is what that means for companies that rely on these gambling ads. Media companies, for example. Did you know that Nielsen Research found an average of 948 gambling ads were broadcast daily on free-to-air TV in Victoria in 2021? That's about 3 times the level of 5 years before. About $300 million plus is spent every year by gaming companies on these ads. Big ramifications going forward, Michael.
That is a big story, Sean.
It is. What's your favourite story of the week?
Oh, something a bit lighter to finish on. It's hard to go past Taylor Swift potentially saving the Australian economy. You got a feel for Swift fans this week, don't you? Because it's been 6 long years since she was last in Australia doing a stadium tour. She's only going to be visiting Tokyo, Singapore, Sydney and Melbourne in our region. There's no Brisbane, no Perth, no New Zealand. So the pressure to get those tickets to the Sydney and Melbourne shows is quite extraordinary. Fans were in a bit of a frenzy when the tickets went on sale, and the ticket tech site doesn't really respond well to frenzies. You had a lot of people left waiting for hours and hours. You can only imagine the lack of productivity in workplaces this week when those tickets did finally go online. But despite that hit to productivity, Taylor Swift's visit should see a pretty kind of solid economic injection for Australia. You've got hotels already being booked, Air New Zealand putting on extra flights to bring kind of Kiwis over who all want to see the show. Everyone's going to be spending plenty of money. So, Sean, if we do end up in a recession later this year, we should have a swift recovery.
Whew, I like it.
Oh, I'm pretty proud of that one. All right, there we go. 5 minutes and pretty much everything you need to know in the world of business. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
We'll be back on Monday morning with the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and this is the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed.